Good evening, viewers. This evening we want to look at one of the most interesting books that I've ever written, The Water Cycle, my very first book, which I wrote when I was still in campus. This is the time I was trying to learn the ropes, as the time I realized that sometimes someone may never know how bright or how gifted they are until they give it a try. The first manuscript of this book was about 578 handwritten pages. And when I typed, it gave me about 500 double spaced pages. Then after the first revision, I got about 350 pages. After the second revision, I got 330 pages. So, what is the water cycle about? Yeah. So this is a book about Noah Kisiang'ani, a character at the throes of change. Colonialism has just come in Cheleba, Mount Masaba, and he is in a dilemma of two cultures. He's in a dilemma of two cultures. As I said last time, the water cycle covers three generations of Kisiang'ani's life. There was his great-grandfather, Buchacha Milicio, then his father Mauka, Kisiang'ani himself, and then his son Mukesi. Those are about four generations. And in this book, as I said, it's a tragedy of Noah Kisiang'ani Mauka, right from puberty all the way to death. It explores the traditions and rights of the Bukusu people of Western Kenya, namely a circumcision, marriage, naming, funerals, and walking the arena. All these are depicted through the rich oral tradition, like songs, oral narratives, proverbs, and riddles. And so this is a book under the post-colonial theory, and is trying to show it actually explores the merits and demerits of our African traditions. Kisiang'ani, the hero, is a victim of the two cultures that clashed during colonialism. Value systems are changing, but the father, Mauka, holds on traditional beliefs. He refuses to contribute a cent towards his education. Kisiang'ani leases farms, plants, sells to meet the cost of his education. He gets excited about a circumcision in the hope that it will access him to adult privileges of controlling a family property in the absence of his father. Conversely, his father Mauka still holds on former rules. This leads to a conflict between the two, since they have Buchacha's traits. So in this book, we are trying to say, I'm trying to show that our heredity determines our consciousness. This is a modernist novel, in which we believe that your heredity determines what you become today. That what you inherit from your parents determines a lot what you become. And that's why I said last time, the structural elements of this book are very similar to The River and the Source by Margaret Ogola. That the weaknesses that we see in Buchacha, because of that kind of violence, aggression, and what we call hegemonic masculinity aspects, they run through these four generations. We see these weaknesses in Kisiang'ani. Of course, they were in Mauka, his father, and then they end up in his son, Mukesi. And so the conflict between Kisiang'ani and his father leads to a series of others that bring him to a pathetic end. In short, the subject of the story is the cyclic nature of life. Yeah, that some weaknesses are cyclic, some can be curses, some can be hereditary traits. They are cyclic in our lives. That's what I say. This is a modernist novel. Yeah. These weaknesses can traverse several generations, afflicting parents and children. The story suggests, yeah, that some traits in a family are usually hereditary. These hereditary and spiritual problems are beyond human control, and this is where Kisiang'ani fails to understand. This is what Kisiang'ani fails to understand. Just as the water cycle is a natural phenomenon, so are these weaknesses and traits. As the storms close in on Kisiang'ani, he discovers that his intellect and sense of ethics cannot assist. That some of these challenges, especially if they are spiritual, they cannot be solved by rationality. The church he opts for lacks the spiritual discernment to diagnose his problem, yeah, to diagnose his challenges, to diagnose his challenges, and he ends up adding to the problems. With enemies all round, Kisiang'ani has no way out. He dies leaving behind a young and miserable family. If there is a lesson Kisiang'ani has learned, then is the power of the tongue. He chooses not to speak any single ill word against his son and rebellious son Mukesi. He also learns to forgive his children, whereas his antecedents used to curse the children. Kisiang'ani decides not to curse any of them. His children succeed because of their father's ability to control his tongue and their strong faith. So there also question of curses, yeah. And this is where now we need to ask ourselves: is it true? Are curses plausible? Are they real? Do they really occur? This book explores all that. The religion he pursued, that religion pursued in sincerity and honesty greatly contributes to development in the society. So the question of religion is explored, that not all religions are bad, whereas some novelists think that religion is just the opium of the poor. In this book, I argue that if a religion is well practiced, it has very many benefits, yeah, to people in the society. Personally, I'm a postmodernist, and postmodernism, unlike modernism, allows people to practice their cultures. Yeah, that even that sometimes religion can be the center. Sometimes rationality can also be at the center. I think it is the reader who talks about arbitrariness of a sign. That sometimes the center gets to the periphery and the periphery comes to the center. The reader argues that writing is not necessarily inferior to speech, that sometimes they exchange positions. Sometimes writing occupies the center, other times, speech occupies the center. They swap positions. And through this, the reader tries to argue that there is nothing like fixity typical of modernism. There is nothing like fixity. We cannot just depend on rationality alone. Sometimes religion can learn from rationality, especially through teaching methods. Like in the church, we can have Bible discussions, and then sometimes rationality can also learn from religion to understand life holistically, So maybe before I end this session, I'd like to just read a few passages from Water Cycle for you to have a foretaste, yeah, of the wonders in this particular book. This is a book which can even be used. This is a book that can be used to teach stylistics, yeah, because there are several passages. I was very, very attentive to style while writing this particular book. So let's look at chapter 31, which is on page 290 of the book. Okoro was shrouded in a haze, and clad in a dismal air. Dew hung idly on the miserable grass. A broad serpent of smoke meandered from Sitawa's house above the three men to oblivion. In front of Sitawa's house stood a rickety table surrounded by Kisiang'ani, Masika, and Wehanya. The morning sunlight um, was creeping into a coral under a sizable strain by the solid mist that rendered it bereft of joy. Siangani was now a thin and was now thin and haggard. He was a wizened old man, a man enfeebled by dissipation and emaciated by domestic misfortunes. His flimsy air was a standing testimony of the families he carried on his back rather than the number of years he had walked on Wele's earth. He fended for Mukesi's, Sitawa's, and Katami's family. Kisiang'ani was never in funds, but in the bottle to pluck up his descending spirits. He had tried again and again to relinquish this besetting sin, but it had gained quickly. It had gained quickly on him to the current state, of infirmity. To the current state of infirmity. Those who have followed the track of his history, will confidently agree that Kisiang'ani was a crestfallen man. He was a mixture of conformity and deviation to the norms of his people. A man who had obeyed and offended tradition at the same time. Look at that. Yeah. Lot of paradox. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. A man who had obeyed and offended tradition at the same time. He was the best example of offend obey or Afro-West, the model which manifested culture and alienation simultaneously. Look at that. Offend obey. That is an oxymoron. Yeah. He was an uprooted tree and a dislocated animal in the puzzle of identity crisis, whose blood and breed risked extinction in the haze of modernity. Yeah. Sometimes you can use metaphor. Yeah. Sometimes you use metaphor to make the description very, very vivid. Yeah. Look at this. He was an uprooted tree and dislocated animal in the puzzle of identity crisis. Yeah, whose blood and breed risked extinction in the haze of modernity. His dilemma owed to the alien waves that tossed him haphazardly. His home was a monument of genius and a pillar of debauchery, an epitome of eminence and a factory of mediocrity. It was a woman whose appearance beckoned admiration, but the heart solicited extreme hatred and repulsion. Kisiang'ani was not an apathetic man, but he had his own way of loving his children such that few appreciated. He would rather not manifest it for them to live. This morning, he evinced an unusual attachment to conversation, a change that surprised Wehanya. He was clad in his tattered baggy pair of trousers with two holes at the seat, a long-sleeved shirt worn at the calves. Yeah, his feet were shod in tire sandals. His hair was white, the hair of wisdom, and beard clean-shaven. It exaggerated his dark complexion. With a snuff in his hand, um, uh, um, with the snuff in his right hand and cupped left palm. He was today a loquacious father. His sons cocked their ears to listen with pleasure. Though emaciated, he was wise. Albeit disappointed, he was knowledgeable. And though poor, he was enlightened, having waded through the turbulent pools of life for tens of seasons. So this is a very, very interesting book, and I know you'll have another reading so that we expound more. Yeah, but in this chapter there is a lot. It's the chapter about Kisiang'ani's death, and I'll look for time so that we keep on reading to give you a foretaste, of this novel. So these are very interesting novel which you should buy. And also I want to remind you to subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel so that you support this channel. We should support local authors. Yeah, and for you to get this book, you can get this book from me. Just reach me through the comments. And this book, I sell it at I just sell it at about 850 shillings. 850 shillings, that is the price. So reach me through the comment section, of course, plus postage. We'll have to post the book where you are. Of course, this was my first edition, and once you order, I'll be able to post it to you. It's a very, very interesting book. So please let us support our local authors. We'll have another chance and I will expound. Thank you so much for listening. You are welcome. Of course, that is how the book. That's how the book looks. Yeah, that is how the book looks. And it is 330 pages. Thank you so much. Thank you.